Everyone has a theory about why Naruto, Bleach and One Piece ruled anime for over a decade. Better writing, better marketing, better timing, and every single one of those answers is wrong. Because here's what no one asks. Why those three? Why not Fairy Tail? Why not D. Grey Man? Why not Hitman Reborn? A show that was running at the same time in the same magazine with a fan base that was just as loud. The answer isn't talent, it isn't luck. It's that each of the big three colonized a completely different psychological need, a wound in the audience that nothing else was touching, and they did it simultaneously. 3 shows, 3 wounds, 0 overlap. That's not coincidence, that's a trap. And the reason there's no new big 3, despite 20 years of trying, is that no single era has produced 3 shows that divide those needs so perfectly again. The fracture is still open, modern anime is still healing from it. Let's do the autopsy. To understand what the big 3 built, you have to understand what they inherited. Dragon Ball didn't just end, it left a crater. For an entire generation of anime fans, it was the first language, the first proof that a man could get stronger through sheer refusal to quit, that power had a shape, that the universe had stakes. When it wound down, it didn't leave behind a successor, it left behind 3 unsatisfied hungers. The hunger for something that felt cool, aesthetically, viscerally, the way Dragon Ball's transformations felt cool, the hunger for something that felt emotionally true, that spoke to the specific loneliness of growing up and not knowing if you were enough, and the hunger for something that felt infinite, a world so large and so alive that you could disappear inside it. Every major shonen that followed Dragon Ball was trying to feed at least one of those hungers. The big 3 each claimed one exclusively. That exclusivity is what made them untouchable. Bleach fed the first hunger, and it did it so completely that nothing since has managed to replicate it. Tite Kubo understood something that no one was saying out loud. Teenagers don't just want to be powerful, they want to look powerful. They want a form for their strength that the world can see. Ichigo's Bankai isn't a technique, it's a statement. The black coat, the oversized blade, the colorless palette against a burning sky. Bleach was constructing an aesthetic language for identity at a time when its audience desperately needed one. This is why Bleach's power system works differently from the other 2. In Naruto, strength comes from heritage and trauma and the people who believed in you. In One Piece, it comes from freedom and choice. In Bleach, strength comes from knowing who you are. The Zanpakuto is literally your soul given physical form. You can't release it until you know its name. You can't master it until you understand yourself. The wound Bleach was healing was the wound of invisibility, the fear that you existed without anyone, including yourself, being able to see you clearly. Ichigo starts the series as a kid who can see ghosts that no one else can see. His entire arc is about being perceived, about being real. That's not an aesthetic choice, that's a psychological thesis disguised as a cool fight scene. And for a generation of teenagers who felt unseen, Bleach didn't just give them a show, it gave them a mirror. Masashi Kishimoto did something that should not have worked. He made his protagonist's greatest weakness the literal source of his power. Naruto is a failure. He graduates last. He has no family. The village hates him for something he didn't choose to be. And the demon inside him, the thing that marks him as dangerous, as other, as wrong, is the exact same thing that eventually saves everyone. Every other shonen at the time was telling its audience, get strong, and you'll be accepted. Naruto was saying something more dangerous and more true. You are worth loving in the state you're already in. The pain doesn't disqualify you. The pain is the credential. This is why the Chunin exams hit so hard. Naruto doesn't win by being better than his opponents. He wins by refusing to let his wounds be the end of the sentence. Rock Lee can't use ninjutsu and nearly dies in the forest. And the show treats his survival as heroic. Gaara was shaped entirely by trauma, and the show traces the exact path from that trauma to his violence without flinching. The wound Naruto was healing was the wound of conditional love, the terror that you are only acceptable when you're performing, that your real self, the messy, failed, scarred version, is the one that should be hidden. Pain understood this. His answer to conditional love was to make pain universal. If everyone suffers equally, no one can be rejected for their suffering. Naruto's answer was simpler and harder. Connect anyway, be seen anyway. It's the less logical answer. It won because it was the answer the audience needed, not the answer the world had actually given them. And here's what no one says about Naruto's ending. Naruto's solution to pain was personal, not systemic. He cried, he connected, he changed one person. The cycle of hatred that pain diagnosed is still structurally intact in the world of Naruto. The victory was emotional, not political. We let that slide because the show gave us what we needed. That's not a criticism, that's proof of how deep the wound went. One Piece solved the third hunger, and it did it in a way that is genuinely unprecedented in the history of manga. Eiichiro Oda didn't just build a world, he built a home. Every island in the Grand Line is a complete civilization with its own history, its own wound, its own liberation story. Along Park is about occupation, Alabasta is about revolution, Enies Lobby is about a girl who cut off her arm to belong somewhere, Water 7 is about a ship that survived so long it grew a heart. These aren't backdrops for Luffy's strength to be displayed against, they're the actual subject of the story. This is why One Piece fans talk about arcs the way other people talk about countries they've lived in, Dressrosa, Wano, Marineford. The names carry weight because the places carry weight. You don't just watch those arcs, you leave them. One Piece was healing was the wound of rootlessness, the feeling that you don't belong anywhere permanent, that every connection is temporary, that home is a thing other people have. Luffy builds a crew the way you build a family, accidentally, stubbornly, by refusing to let people be alone when he can stop it. He doesn't recruit. He finds people at their lowest point and simply refuses to leave without them. Nami, Robin, Chopper. The pattern repeats because the thesis repeats. No other show has committed to that thesis across 25 years of storytelling. One Piece's length is not a flaw. It's the argument. The world keeps expanding because the point is that belonging doesn't end. There's always another island. There's always more room. That's not just good writing. That's a specific targeted answer to a specific psychological hunger that Dragon Ball left unsatisfied. Now here's the counter-argument, and it's a strong one. Plenty of shows after the big three have addressed all three of these needs. Demon Slayer handles identity and aesthetics better than most. My Hero Academia practically wrote a thesis on conditional love and inherited wounds. Attack on Titan built a world that fans lived inside for a decade. So why don't we call them the new big three? Because they don't divide the needs. They each try to address all three at once, and in doing so, none of them colonizes any single wound completely. Demon Slayer looks incredible, but its emotional thesis is about grief and family, not identity. My Hero Academia knows exactly what it wants to say about validation, but its world never becomes a home. It's a setting, not a civilization. Attack on Titan is mythologically complete, but its emotional register is dread, not belonging. Each of them is excellent. None of them is exclusive. The big three worked because they were in conversation with each other. You watch Bleach for one thing, Naruto for another, One Piece for a third. They made each other possible. When Bleach started struggling, fans didn't leave anime. They leaned harder into Naruto. When Naruto ended, the grief was real, but One Piece was still there, still expanding, still refusing to be finished. They created an ecosystem. What modern anime has created is a marketplace. The difference is belonging. The big three didn't become the big three because they were the three best anime of their era. They became the big three because they were the three most psychologically precise answers to the three hungers that Dragon Ball left unsatisfied. Bleach said, "You deserve to be seen, and your identity deserves a form." Naruto said, "Your wounds don't disqualify you, they're the reason you're here." One Piece said, "There is a home for you, keep sailing." Each of those is a complete thesis. Each of them spoke to a different fracture in the audience, and because they ran simultaneously, because their fan bases overlapped without completely intersecting, they created something that hasn't been replicated, a shared cultural infrastructure for an entire generation of anime fans. We grew up in that infrastructure. Most of us didn't notice it until it was gone. Here's what I can't stop thinking about. Naruto ended, Bleach returned, One Piece is still going, and the conversation about a new big three has been happening for 15 years now, longer than some of its participants have been alive. Every year there's a new candidate, every year the throne stays empty. Maybe the question is wrong. Maybe we're not waiting for 3 new shows to emerge. Maybe we're waiting for 3 new wounds to open. Wounds deep enough, specific enough, shared enough, that only one show in the world can answer each one. The big 3 didn't create those wounds, they just found them first. The question is, what's bleeding right now? And whether anything is paying attention.